So without having that if you, as the old saying said, if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. And so not having that history, not having a sense of identity, not having a sense of purpose or a sense of direction, I went to the job and I thought that my employer, who was usually a Caucasian individual, was going to give me that purpose, was going to tell me what it is to be a man. So I was looking for my job to provide me something that it wasn't designed by God to provide. So a job, and this is a big mistake that I see. A lot of people, they go to the job and they're looking for their employer to give them purpose, to give them identity, to help them find their history, to contact their roots. And a Caucasian individual can't do that for a black man. And I, as a black man, I can't do that for, I can maybe point you in the right direction, but I can't give you that sense of identity. Now, on a spiritual standpoint, getting into some of what we're talking about, the Bible, what we're talking about Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism, the Kabbalah, you name it, I've studied it. Now, there may be some new stuff out there, but most of the stuff I studied because I turned my back on Christianity because of where I was raised. So to me, when somebody packing the Bible, they came and they talking about God, I associated that with abuse. So I wasn't interested in anything that God, Christianity had to say because I associated that with abuse. So I went looking outside of the church for something that only God could give, which was purpose. And so that's why you see on your handout, I do an entire show called Dare, or an entire seminar. I have a book called Dare to Be You. And I don't want to go into it too much, but that's part of what I do when I talk about job placement. Because the first thing, in the Bible, the word sin, if you look it up in the Greek word is hamartano. We are taught that sin is living without the law. But in the Bible, sin is living without your share, lot, or destiny. And I said, don't take my word for it. When you get home tonight, you can go in the Bible, you go to dictionary.com, you can Google it, you can look it up. The Greek word for that word sin means hamartano, or hamartero, which means living without your share. And so I thought about that, and I was like, so then okay. I said, well, sin, I always thought sin was violation of the law, doing something wrong. But sin is being outside of your assigned position. That's what the Greek definition of the word, for our English word, sin. The word iniquity is where when you go to Sunday mornings and they preach about living in sin, the word iniquity is where we get living above or without the law. So really, iniquity is when you do something wrong, then that's what you're doing. So iniquity and sin, they're really close. But the enemy hides, the devil hides in the details. And so, if you don't know the details, that's what tripped me up when it came to employment. Because a job, what employment does, employment prepares you for deployment. So, before I could open up this shop, I had to have an employment that taught me how to run a business like this. Because an employment, you should never take a job to earn. You should only take a job to learn. So, if you go into a job with something that you've mastered, you're wasting your time because you're not going to learn anything new. You always take a job for what you can learn to prepare you for where you want to deploy yourself. So there's a big difference between deployment and employment. So a lot of the guys that I worked for, when they came out of prison, these guys were working at Wendy's and McDonald's and the IHOP. And they were back there taking out trash, flipping burgers, and these guys had the intelligence of an engineer. And they was wondering why they was back there scheming, trying to figure out how to, break into the cash register or do this or that, because they're not engaged. What they're doing is not requiring them to put forth any effort. And so there's no focus, there's no discipline, and there's no order. And I talk about that all through my book and all through my other seminar that I do that talks about finding purpose. Because again, purpose alleviates sin. Because again, sin is living without purpose, living without your position or your office. And then I go into the Greek and I look up the word for Christ. I was always taught, like most believers, Jesus Christ, that's his name. But Jesus is his name, Christ is his title. Why is that important? That's very important because you have a name and I have a name. When you go to look for your job, your name helps to determine. For example, I do a Dear Canadian report. It's a 30 to 60 page report that's based on one thing. And that's based on your name and your date of birth. Now, why is that important? Because in the book of Numbers, there's this thing that they call alphanumerics. Alphanumerics is just simply when Jesus changed. Why did Jesus change the name of certain people in the Bible? And if you go to most preachers and you ask them, they won't tell you, or they won't know. Just like I didn't know when I was a preacher. And so the things that I try to help people with is those hidden things that trip us up. So when you change a man's name, you change a man's destiny. So man is name and name is man. So you take the word man and you turn it around, you have the word name. So name, because the E is silent. So N-A-M, if you turn it around, is M-A-N. So a man is his name. So when Jesus saw Saul, he changed his name into Peter. And then in the Old Testament, when he saw Abram, he changed his name into Abraham. Because Abraham is father of many nations. If his name had changed, stayed Abram, he couldn't have been the father of many nations. Because the name determines the destiny or the purpose. That's why Jesus or Yahushua, depending on who you talk to and what version of the Bible that you read, Yahushua is the name, Christ is the position. So you have a name and you have a position. The problem is no one has revealed it to you. So a part of what I do is I reveal what your individual God-given, what I call diaconia or your spiritual DNA. So my name comes up as Master Teacher 33. So if you go into the Bible and you do the alphanumerics on my name and my date of birth, you come up with that particular number and that particular, and it says in all of my reports, and I got a whole report that's, man, I would say over 100 pages. And all it does is tell me what I'm supposed to do. And it's also told me what I've already done. And so the first time I've read it, I've done over 1,000 of these. I haven't done one yet that came back with someone who read it and said that this does not apply to me or it's not accurate. So what the report does is it tells you specifically what job you should go into. That you are designed by the Creator. Because if you don't want the purpose of a thing, you don't ask another thing. If you want the purpose of a thing, you got to ask the Creator of the thing. So God is my Creator. So if I want to know what I'm supposed to do, I got to go talk to Him. So I can't ask you what am I supposed to do. Only thing you can tell me is point me in a direction. So the only thing I did was what used to be in the Bible and what people in the East already know. We don't know in the West. So when I was listening to Japan, when I was in Japan, that's when I got into studying all the metaphysics. And the metaphysics just means, meta means before, physics means physical. So before anything manifests in the physical, it happens over here in the spiritual. And then the Bible says it this way. Whatever you think about, you bring about. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is it. That's so important because when it comes to getting a job, you want to make sure that you get in the job that you are designed by God to be in. Because then, that's where your power comes from. Because Jesus was in power because the word Christos in the Greek means power to fulfill the office. So when you look up the word Christ, and they don't tell us that in church, and I wish they did, because then we understand why Jesus was so effective when he was here. When he walked around, and they said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm here to do my Father's will." You can't find no one in the Bible where Jesus said, "I'm here to do my own thing. You know what, I want to go start this." Jesus said one thing, "I'm here to do the will of my Father." That's all he said when they asked him, what are you doing? Why are you here? When his mother told him he was out teaching somewhere, he said, "I was out doing the will of my Father." But if somebody asked me that 5 years ago, I was like, "Oh, I'm trying to make some money. You know, I'm trying to get paid." Because I didn't know my purpose. And so it wasn't until I found that, and that's why it's so important, because it may be a little different, and usually it is. All my jobs were in law enforcement or in corrections. I had nothing, and before that I worked at the warehouse at HEB. I had jobs working in fitness. I was a general manager of a health club. I worked at UPS. I worked at the Postal Service. I did court security. I was a bailiff. You know, I did regular street cop work. I worked at a max security prison with people on death row. I worked at a medium security prison. I worked at the farm system, pre-release, guys getting ready to get out. I worked at the half out. So I did all of these jobs, but none of them jobs had nothing to do with my purpose. My purpose was teaching. And so if I had knew that, if somebody had came and told me that when I was a kid, I would have went into teaching. Because I've been doing it all my life, but I didn't. Your purpose is so close to you, it's like breathing. You do it every day, all day, but when you wake up in the morning, nobody tells you to breathe. You breathe automatically. You don't even notice you're doing it. That's what purpose is. It's so close to you that it's interwoven in you. So every day you do it. The problem is you're just not getting paid for it. So what I do is I sit people down Before, now, I can get anybody a job anywhere, anytime. Getting a job is easy, but getting a job that you designed to have, getting a job that gives you fulfillment, getting a job that gives you identity and that allows you to, what I call the 3 E's, express, expose, and expand. We are all here because we want to express ourselves. We want to expose the gift that we have, and we want to expand our abilities. And so that's what this is all about. What my program does is it brings you in, we sit down, we do a Dear Canary report. After the Dear Canary report, the first thing I ask is, if you are in dire need of assistance right now, where finding purpose and doing all of this stuff is great, but right now I need to pay my light bill, you know, my rent's due, my car payment, then we skip this and we go right out. I take out my contact list, I make a few phone calls, send you on some interviews. Within 30 days, guaranteed you have a job. I haven't found nobody yet that I have not been able to assist them with getting a job. Now the only thing is, for example, I know a place